This is a long-term review of the Aero 1 Broadhead from Crafted Archery based on hunting experience. Before we get started, full disclosure, I get a discount on Crafted Archery gear, and so does my mate Bailey, who you'll see in this video. Dan is a big supporter of us and what we do. However, we are under no obligation to create content for Dan or use Crafted Archery products exclusively. These opinions are our own, based on extensive field experience, and I've made this video for a bit of fun and to raise some awareness about these broadheads. As I talk through my thoughts on this broadhead, you'll see some hunting and necropsy footage. If you're not keen on seeing that, find something else to watch. My mate and I have been using this broadhead for roughly 12 months each, give or take, and have taken somewhere close to about 80 animals collectively. Our context is mostly average sized goats and pigs in our local area of northern New South Wales, but we did kill some fallow deer as well. Bailey shot a few goats using trad bows with these broadheads, but most of our experience has been with compound bows close to the 80-pound range, and most of our kills have been with 150 grain broadheads, but these broadheads are available in a variety of weights. We'll talk about accuracy and tune first. These heads group as well as other similarly designed broadheads. We found that they would group with field points fairly well out to about 45 metres, but much further out we'd see the broadheads hitting low and to the right of our field point impacts. This is unavoidable with wider fixed blade heads such as this, and it didn't really concern us as most of our hunting shots are inside 35 metres anyway. Both of our setups have been shooting close to 300 feet per second at different times, and I noticed my groups tightening up a little bit when I dropped that speed back to around the mid 280 feet per second range.
So exit wound, not first scanning. Entry's just a little bit further forward. There's the entry wound, right on that point of the shoulder. Shot was quartering on, so the entry was about here on the onside and it's exited just here on the offside.
Sharpness now. They come sharp out of the packet, and Bailey killed plenty of animals with them like this, but I always touch them up before going hunting because it's just what I like to do. Even though the blades are super thick, as you can see, the bevel is spot on and it's very easy to get a super grabby, sharp edge on them. They're around 45 Rockwell hardness, so they're easy to sharpen and very durable. But after hitting dirt when passing through an animal, you'll need to give them a touch up before putting them back in your quiver. We never really measured sharpness with any tests besides getting them sharp to how we like them and shooting them through animals, and they always did a great job. One thing to keep in mind is that after repeated use and sharpening, the tip may tend to round off just a little bit as you start to remove some material and bring that edge in just a little bit closer to the center of the broadhead.
Okay, so here's the exit on that goat, out the front of the chest, well a little bit to the left if anything, and it's broken that brisket bone. And there's the entry, so she was obviously quartering away. That's about where we want to hit everything.
Following on from sharpness, we'll talk about the overall lethality and penetration now. It's impossible for us to say whether these heads kill much better than other two-blade fixed heads, but what I will say is they definitely kill as well as other two-blade heads we've used in the past. Their design sees them make a nice wide entry hole, and you definitely get that S cut that people are hoping to see when shooting a single bevel broadhead. Whether single bevel or double bevel is best is probably a conversation for another time, not in this video. But the norm for us is definitely complete pass-throughs and animals dying quickly. It's definitely worth noting, however, that shooting the poundage we do and the arrow setups that we do, most of the shots that are going to present are going to be full pass-throughs anyway. A couple of times we haven't got a full pass-through is when we've been shooting full-length shots, or we've done quartering away shots and the arrows got caught up on the offside shoulder, for example. So yeah, most of the time they're just zipping straight through as you'd expect.
So it's broken that leg bone there. I don't know what you'd call that, you know, like it's sort of between the shoulder. You can see that bone has well and truly just been cut straight in half, completely severed it. Now, whether it's because it was a single bevel or not, it's hard to say. Like maybe any other good two blade would have done the same thing. It's a very heavy bone in terms of like a, you know, anatomy wise, but it's still a pretty light critter for this kind of bow and arrow setup. But you can see that broadhead's perfect. Just need a bit of a lick on a diamond stone and it'd be good to go back in the quiver again. Yeah, so there's some there, and then there's more. Yeah, so that's all off that frontal shot. He's just bled out really quick. I'm just looking for my arrow that I hit that billy with. He was standing on that rock bench, and I shot from underneath that tree just there. And we found the arrow where it's exited. Jammed here into these rocks, so pulled it out already obviously, but yeah, I'm just going to show you here, like it's, so it hit hard enough that the back snapped off when it hit into the rocks, but that broadhead's fine. Entered here, exited here. So it's travelled the entire length of his rib cage and then come out with enough force to jam into the rocks up there and bust the back end of it off.
The main reason Bailey and I really like these heads over the time we've used them is their durability. Because we're doing a lot of shooting, a head being durable is high on our list of priorities because replacing broadheads every time they break becomes expensive. No broadhead is indestructible, and these heads are no exception. However, it is very rare that we have a broadhead break. A lot of the country we hunt is full of granite rock and soil, and we hit a lot of rocks after our arrows go through animals. There have been some cases where we've had a broadhead break or bend at the ferrule after hitting a rock or hitting a shoulder on an exit, something like that. And the animal maybe has torqued a little bit as the arrow's gone through, so it's put some twist on the arrow and the broadhead. But these cases are rare. I will say the overwhelming majority of our hunting is seeing us pick up our arrows, give the broadheads a hit on a stone, and going right back in the quiver. We should also mention here that we are using aluminium inserts and collars on the front of the arrows, which are of course softer than stainless steel or titanium inserts, and certainly softer than the steel in these broadheads. So in cases where heavy impact is sustained, it's likely that the components on the front of the arrow are bending, which is saving the broadheads a lot of the time. And that's not to say these components are terrible. I mean, we've used them for a long time and they're fantastic. And it's certainly cheaper to replace arrows and these components than it is to replace broadheads. Even though this video is based heavily on hunting experience, for a little bit of fun, we did shoot a couple of these broadheads into a concrete block just to see what would happen. It came as no surprise to us that the broadheads were fine. The arrows busted, but the broadheads were fine. One of the broadheads suffered a hell of a lot more damage than the other one because Bailey hit the same spot with the second shot, so there was a bit of an indentation in the concrete that saw a lot more of the edge of the second broadhead come in contact with the concrete. But both the broadheads spun fine afterwards. They both resharpened perfectly fine. The heavily damaged one I shot a small pig with about a week afterwards, and the other one I actually shot a fallow doe with about a week after that.
It might not be spinning 100% perfectly, there's a little wobble in it, but we've just taken that second broadhead out and put in a new arrow. Yeah, we'd hunt with that. This one here, that sidebird's okay. This is the one that was fairly heavily chipped, and I've nearly got that edge back to being straight now, so it's not going to act like it's serrated. If you see here though, just to demonstrate, maybe you'll be able to see, had that burr just coming back along there, so nearly getting it to a point where it's sharp. That's the broadhead I had to sharpen a lot after Bailey hit the concrete with it. Entry, and this is the exit. Right, yeah, so she only ran what? She might have ran 100 metres at the most, probably more like 70, 80.
So yeah, lots of broadheads are probably capable of doing that. We just felt like doing it for a little bit of fun, just to show that they are a very durable head. Before we finish up, we'll talk about some of the potential drawbacks and considerations you may have with a head like this. Because they're very wide and thick, the potential for penetration might not be quite as high as other broadheads that are maybe a little bit longer and a little bit thinner. We shoot enough poundage that penetration on the stuff around here is not an issue. However, I did make a very steep quartering away shot on a fallow buck with one of these broadheads, and it skipped along the ribs, actually went underneath the shoulder and came out the same side in front of the shoulder just here. If I was using a broadhead that had a longer, more pointy profile, this may not have happened, but it's hard to say that. I am, however, 100% confident that was the outcome of that shot, because I shot the same buck with a rifle a week later and looked at the wounds myself. This isn't to say these broadheads aren't good, it's just worth noting that a wide broadhead might not dig into an animal in the same way as something with a different, longer, pointier profile. It didn't put me off using these broadheads. It was just something I stayed aware of afterwards and made sure any really steep quartering shots, so I kind of just passed up and waited for the animal to turn a little bit more before I shot. Finally, we'll talk about the cost. These broadheads are $50 for a 3-pack here in Australia, which comes to about $16 to $17 per broadhead. This is on par with similar mid to high-end broadheads from other Australian companies, many of which I'm also a fan of and I've used in the past. You can get these broadheads in right or left bevel and weights anywhere from 80 grains up to 175 grains, so there are stacks of options there. And my final thoughts are that I'm obviously a fan of these broadheads and how they perform. For the type of hunting we do, in terms of me and my mates, they're a very good choice. Go ahead to the Crafted Archery website that's in the description to have a bit of a look. And if you use the code WILD, W-I-L-D, at the checkout, you'll get a small discount on your gear and it'll show a little bit of support for my channel and what I'm trying to do.